but somewhere it's about to be 10:05. So we're going to get started this morning. Good morning to everyone. Again, my name is Mike Paday. I'm the class of 1989. I'm the AVP for Alumni Relations here at the University of Houston. I graduated from the Hilton College of Hotel Restaurant Management, and I'm glad to be your host this morning with our esteemed panel from both the Bauer College of Business and the College of Technology. And each one of our panelists today will have a short presentation and a conversation about their expertise. And I will introduce all of them at the beginning, and then I'm going to come back to Dr. Stewart, who's going to lead us off. So going down the line, I want to introduce to you Dr. Barbara Stewart, a professor and coordinator of retailing and consumer science at the University of Houston College of Technology. She served as an academic administrator in leadership positions for numerous professional organizations and has authored approximately 240 professional papers and presentations. Dr. Olivia Johnson is an assistant professor in retailing and consumer science in the Department for Human Development and Consumer Sciences in the College of Technology. Her research focuses on social movement and social media, as well as the consumption behavior of cultural subgroups. Dr. Pal Robinson, Dr. Pal Robinson, professor of supply chain management at the Bauer College of Business, where he served as coordinator for the supply chain management degree program. His research and teaching centers on logistics, management, supply chain design, forecasting, inventory systems, and e-commerce oriented supply chains. It's a lot there, Pal. And Dr. Funda Sahin is an associate professor of supply chain management in the Bauer College of Business. Her teaching and research interests are in logistics, operations, supply chain management, and inventory planning. And I want to welcome all of our panels. I do have to throw one shout out for today's collaboration. I see Blake Mudd's face on the screen down here joining us this morning. Heard Blake's presentation with the College of Technology. I've lost track, Blake, I'm sorry, a couple months ago. And I thought this is something I think would be really, really interesting and a way to collaborate the College of Technology and the Bauer College of Business. So whether he's just put his handsome mug on the screen and is not paying attention or otherwise, but I wanted to throw a shout out to Blake to say thank you for a great presentation a couple months ago and getting us started down this path. So to get us started today, I want to welcome Dr. Barbara Stewart, who is going to lead us off. And again, a couple things, Dr. Stewart, before you go, I want to remind our group, unmute, speaker view, and I will be monitoring the chat for your questions as we go along. Dr. Stewart, the floor is yours.
Thanks so much, Mike. I'm happy to be here, and I love talking about retail and consumer science, and I'm excited to do that with you today because it's a topic you already know a lot about. So if you'll indulge me, at the bottom of your screen, you have a reactions button. I'd like you to go to that reactions button, and I'm going to ask you a couple of questions. And if you've had this experience, I want you to give me a thumbs up. And the thumbs up looks just like that, okay? So my first question is, how many of you like to shop? Look at all those thumbs. How many of you like to spend money? How many of you like to engage in entertainment, leisure activities that require you to buy something? And lastly, how many of you like to eat or go places in a vehicle that requires gas? Well, thanks so much. I appreciate all the thumbs up, and we'll have another thumbs up session in a few minutes. Retail is an amazing and dynamic field. Retail is the largest employer in the United States and worldwide for developed countries. Retail employs 1 in 4 Americans. So 25% of American jobs are supported by or support retail. And it is dynamic. Even though we hear about store closings, for every store that we hear in the news that is closing, 5 new retail establishments open. So it's an amazing time to be thinking about retail. But right now we're going to talk specifically about holiday retail. And there's never been a holiday season for retail as there is for 2020. There are 3 major things that make this season so much different. The first one is that online retailing has exploded. During the retail shutdowns, 90% of consumers had to change the way they shopped. 40% of people over the age of 60 shopped online for the first time, and they found they loved it. It's changing, dynamic and changing. For this holiday season, 90% of consumers expect to buy things online, and 75% of those expect to buy more than half of their Christmas expenditure online. So again, a thumbs up. How many are you buying something online this season? Thumbs up? Lots of you. You fit those statistics well. The second reason that shopping is so different this year is that the selling season has lengthened. It began with Amazon. In October, they pushed Amazon Prime Day into October, and that drew the selling season earlier into the calendar. Now, retailers know that the more selling days for holiday, the greater the spend, and that's more revenue. Soon after October, Amazon Days, Walmart and Target followed suit with their special weeks of events. And then came the Black Friday hype. Many of the major retailers decided to close for Thanksgiving, and yet Black Friday deals emerged as early as late October, and they were in full swing by early and mid-November. Many of them, rather than one Black Friday day or a weekend of days, it was a week of deals, daily deals that told the shoppers, now's a great time and to continue to shop. In fact, Black Friday numbers were up 21% over last year. And Cyber Monday, while some thought maybe because we were so used to shopping online already, Cyber Monday numbers were still up 17%, a little lower than the statisticians thought we might see, but still a substantial 17% up. So the season is lengthened. And 68% of consumers told us that they intended to shop earlier this year. How about you? Thumbs up if you did, have, or plan to shop earlier this year than you did last year. Some of you are still procrastinating. Your dollars are still out there waiting to be spent. The third reason that this is a holiday season like no others is innovation. Retail and supply chain and logistics specialists have been agile in changing and adapting. The acceleration of innovation has moved forward, taking within one season what might normally have taken 4 to 10 years. 50 to 80% of consumers tell us that they are fearful of shopping in a physical store. How about you? Are you a bit timid, a bit fearful to be in store? Give me a thumbs up if so. Many of you are already shopping, and the numbers are rising for in-store shopping. And even with 90% of consumers expecting to shop online, we know that well into the 60s, 63, 68% also intend to shop in physical stores. But what are the stores doing? They're being very innovating in terms of avoiding contact. And we've learned that customers are more comfortable when the retailer is very visible about their cleaning. That doesn't mean behind the scenes. That means we want to see it as a consumer. They're very comfortable with the wearing of masks. It's greater when we can feel the social distancing, and we know that employees in store are meeting our needs. But also innovation has accelerated in terms of touchless retail, contactless checkout and payment systems, as well as virtual reality try-ons, are all things that might have taken longer, but now we have them in place today. Distribution, we'll hear a little bit more later, and I'll save that, but they have been exceptionally innovating in meeting consumers' demand. So in total, consumers are very ready to spend this season. The National Retail Federation says that overall, sales this year will exceed by 3.6 to 5.2% over sales last year. And when you look at the volume that encompasses, it's a huge impact, a huge change in national economics. particularly in a year that has been so hard. And I'm pleased to report too that Small Business Saturday was a huge success this year. So there are aspects where we missed our small businesses. We appreciated them and we have become more loyal to them both online and in store. So we expect to spend lots. 80% of consumers expect to spend as much or more this year than they did last year. And here's a final one for the thumbs up. Overall, that 80% more or the same averages $1,000 per consumer. Give me a thumbs up if you think you're going to spend your $1,000 as a contribution, or if you're going to spend your $10, which also contributes to that kind of a high and comfortable and good for retail. So in total, my message is that retail is vibrant, it has vitality, it is engaged, and it's highly successful this holiday season. And with that, I'll turn it over to Olivia. Olivia?
Thank you, Barbara. I don't have nearly as much information as Barbara does because she is a definite expert in this arena. But I just wanted to talk a little bit about the intersection of technology and retail because I think that is where retail is headed. I'm going to ask you guys a question. What percentage of consumers do you think have an Amazon Prime account? Go ahead and use your chat and tell me what percentage of consumers you think have an Amazon Prime account. Seeing a lot of numbers, seeing a lot of numbers. So looks like Bridget and Holly are the closest. 82% of consumers have an Amazon Prime account. And to just understand what that means, that's more than the percentage of people who own dogs, who voted in the last election, and who plan on putting up a Christmas tree. So if you think about this, Amazon is definitely has a big stake in the retail industry. And I had the opportunity to attend the National Retail Federation conference this January with my esteemed colleague, Blake. And one thing that I heard at the conference was that retail is not dead. Boring retail is what's dead. And so I thought that this was a really good intro into seeing what are some of the new technologies that we're going to be looking at or that are making a revival now that COVID has come about. Anyone familiar with QR codes? I think for a very long time that we used QR codes and people were really excited about them, but they have went away. What we see now is that a lot of restaurants are using QR codes instead of having physical menus. And this is giving people opportunities to have less touch points in restaurants and other locations. So this provides customers a touchless way to get that information. And that's been an excellent way because we see that a lot of people, like I think about 80% of people have smartphones. And so a lot of times retailers are using their QR codes to get information about products and information about different products into the stores. Also, you'll start to see more QR codes around retail locations where you have less people in the store, and so that you can scan the QR code and get information about a product. Maybe you want to know about the content, what you can use it for. Maybe you're interested in getting some meatless chicken, right? Because we know that that whole vegan thing is really becoming important. And now that people are starting to include more QR codes so you can provide more information on your product. So the next thing I want to talk about is BOPIS. And you probably have heard this, and I've talked to my omni-channel students about this yesterday. BOPIS is buy online and pick up in store. I don't know about you, but I'm a fan, right? This is the best of both worlds where you have an opportunity to search for a product online, and then you have the opportunity to skip the lines and go directly into the checkout and pick up at store. And this has really been good for retailers and consumers because this allows retailers to actually get you into the store, right? Bringing you back into that brick and mortar space, but also providing you the opportunity that you don't have to stand in line, you don't have to, be around a whole bunch of people, and you have the ability to pick up your product and see if it's what you really like. Although we see e-commerce is so big, I have a question for you guys. When people purchase apparel online, out of 10 items, how many items do you think are returned back to the retailer? Out of 10 items, how many items do you think are returned back to the retailer? So I think Mike was first and I saw 6. And yes, 6 out of 10 apparel items are actually returned back to the retailer. And so they are constantly, from an e-commerce perspective, they're constantly trying to figure out how do we make sure that these products stick. Where on the, if you purchase a product online, an apparel product online, you are only returning that apparel item about 3 out of the 10 times. So that's basically doubling it. So we are seeing that BOPUS is really being really successful. And curbside pickup, why didn't this come before? This is amazing, right? The idea that you can go to online, you can purchase your product online, and then the store loads it into your car for you. I had a wonderful experience with Walmart. I purchased a product. I bought a big 65-inch screen TV. And the way that Walmart does it with their app, you actually tell them what parking space you're in, you put that information, you scan the code, and someone comes up to your car and they bring in your TV and put it right into your car. So we see this not only with stores like Walmart, but of course with grocers. We see that curbside pickup really taking on a life of its own. And I love this idea because it's so cyclical. Remember, like there was a time where people got their milk delivered, they got their groceries delivered, and now we see that coming back into play. Other technology that is making COVID change our consumer behavior is scan and go and self-checkout. We see more stores starting to implement in their stores. I had a wonderful opportunity when I was in New York to go to a grocery store where you can actually scan your products in your shopping cart. And so you didn't have anyone that you were checking out with. Or if you have had a chance to want to go into one of the amazing Amazon Go stores where you scan an app to get into the store and everything is done digitally, you do not check out at the register. These are all really important when we talk about making changes to customer and the way that they're shopping specifically for the holiday season. And then one other thing that we see is augmented reality. This is becoming more and more important in retail locations where customers are able to see the products on these new mirrors where they can actually try on the products, but not actually having tried them on, and they can see themselves and visualize themselves in products. And the last thing I want to talk about, which is really amazing, we see an increase in drive-ins. I think this is amazing, right? Like the fact that drive-ins, whether that is through movie theaters, whether we're talking about restaurants, or whether we're talking about even with clothes, that drive-ins are becoming way more popular, important to consumers as we move into the holiday seasons. And so I am of the reality or of the mindset of Barbara that retail is not dead, but boring retail is. And so innovation is going to be so important as we move forward. And I'll go ahead and turn it over to my colleague, Powell.
Good, thank you. Thank you, Olivia, and thank you everybody for being here. I'm very happy to be here myself. We're going to divide the part on supply chain into 2 parts, actually. I'm going to look at the supply side of supply chain, and then Funda will take it up, and she's going to look at the distribution side of it a little bit. So I've been listening to all the positive things and all the cheerful things about the holiday season coming up, and I'm really excited about it also. But I wanted to bring up some of the challenges that have been introduced by COVID, in particular in supply chains. So let me start off with supply chains. What are supply chains? Well, they're the coordinated flow of products everywhere from the supplier's supplier all the way to the customer's customer. And the idea is to get the right item, the right quantity, in the right shape, at the right time, at the right place. So again, that's quite a challenge. The holiday season for supply chain began when? Okay, well, it wasn't October, let me tell you that. It was most likely December 26, 2019, okay? So it's probably the day after Christmas, the planning for the next holiday season begins. If you look at the supply chain, we know that we have to have our products manufactured. We have to ship them to the distribution centers. Before manufacturing, we may have to buy a lot of components, source them globally around the world. Our suppliers around the world have suppliers themselves around the world. And so we go through all these echelons of supply chain planning. Going along with that, we have a series of transportation links. And these links may be ocean bound, taking 5 weeks to go from Pacific Rim to maybe LA. We have a lot of trail transit times, adding in weeks to the lead time as well. So actually, whenever you look at the holiday planning coming up right now, we have to look back 10 months, 11 months, and to see what was happening during that time to allow us to get that product so we can use automatic scanning so we can pick it up at the curb, so on. The pre-pandemic had a focus on supply chain efficiency. And when we went global to reduce cost. We went to China, we go to Vietnam, we go to other countries to reduce our cost. There's also the concept called lean supply chains. That means carry the minimum inventory, make everything operate efficiently, and the focus is on cost reduction. Okay, so we have globalization, we have a focus on cost reduction. And then all of a sudden we have President Trump has his tariffs on China. And what do? Well, they start interrupting the flow of product from suppliers in China. We saw PPEs, a lot of PPEs were made in China due to globalization, minimum cost strategies. We didn't have them here locally. Similar, it happens for automotive parts, parts for toys, everything going into this holiday season had a lot of disruptions due to the tariffs, for example. When the COVID virus hit, that was even more disruptive. I'm sure a lot of you were in line with me when the COVID was becoming a reality and we were buying up all the toilet paper and all the paper towels. And then a little bit later, we started packing our pantries with products to go into quarantine with. Okay, from a supply chain perspective, when you see that, you have a massive spike, and we saw distribution centers were emptied of those products, suppliers were emptied of those products. Clorox, Colgate, a lot of PPE manufacturers could not find enough supply to ramp up capacity. Okay, so that was not only happening in food products and PPEs, but it was also happening in our gift items. It was happening with clothing, where factories were shutting down because of high infection rates in the factory. So this is pretty much a little bit of the background of the environment that supply management had to face this year going into it. Food processors. I'm sure a lot of you rushed to the grocery store and bought ground beef before it stocked out. I know I did. I filled up my freezer. And so again, that kind of brought a new light to supply chain, that we can lose our supply chain due to loss of our workforce. And so that was a major learning effect that we certainly went through this year with supply chain. Inventory roller coaster. Too much, too little, we don't know when we're going to stock out. So that was certainly happening as well. So kind of the bottom line is manufacturers had to respond to the shortages. And how did they respond? To reduction of variety. And I think you're going to see that as you go shopping this year. You may see a little bit less variety. And then you're also going to see a lot of products are going to be late to market. I saw a article just the other day looking at 5% shortage of transportation capacity going into the holidays, and that 5% is going to yield 700 million items late for the holiday season. What have we learned during this? Industry has responded very well to these shortages and these difficulties, and probably the first thing I like to think about that we learned is we have to protect our workers. and very much. And there's been a lot of work going on that. The Center for Disease Control has come out with a lot of protocols and suggestions for that. And if you look in the news, you'll see a lot of our major food companies are following those. We also learned that the cost focus on supply chain may not be the best strategy. Maybe we need more flexibility built in, more risk management. Okay, and I think we're going to see that happening in the future. A lot of companies didn't know who their suppliers were. When Clorox wanted to get more ingredients for PPEs or for sanitizers, they didn't know who their supplier was. They knew who shipped it to them, but they didn't know who the supplier was. Turns out, kind of interesting, all the major PPE manufacturers had identical suppliers. So when one went to increase their order, they found that they were all there increasing their supply orders. So again, maybe supply chain mapping, supplier mapping is what's going to be happening with larger firms now, trying to really understand their global supply chains. The shift to a regional orientation is also happening. Why do we have all of our PPEs? Why do we have all of our toys made overseas? What portion need to come back home and enter into the US economy? Strategic relationships with suppliers are critical. A lot of firms conduct business on a transactional basis. You give me the lowest price, you deliver when I need it, and you have this order. Okay, how about next order? Well, I have to compete with somebody else for that low price. Okay, versus the transactional approach, there can be the more of an integrated, coordinated approach where your supply base is viewed as a partner or a part of your company to ensure that you can deliver the product on time. So those are just some of the things that I thought about. Certainly supply management, like other areas, is going through an innovation revolution with AI, and a lot of other technologies are coming in. Robotics has been putting into food processors to eliminate the potential threat of a virus or infection to the workforce. So there are just tremendous changes happening on the supply side of the supply chain. With that, let me get off here and turn it over to Funda so we can move along.
Well, good morning. Thank you very much for joining us this morning, and I'm very happy to be here with you this morning as well. As my colleagues mentioned, we're having a record sales, online sales this year, which is redefining the retail industry. And from a supply chain standpoint, especially from a distribution standpoint, it is also bringing some challenges with it. But this year certainly highlighted the importance of building supply chains that are resilient, that are agile, that are able to respond to these unexpected things. So I want to pause here for a minute and talk about the pre-pandemic and how the supply chains were evolving from a distribution standpoint. I'm going to use Amazon as an example. Amazon reinvented distribution with a very strong focus on customer service. So pre-pandemic, many companies such as Walmart were trying to move their business online. They've been working at it for a while. So the omni-channel growth has been explosive. But with this, it resulted in a battle between what we call the brick and click. The brick being Walmart with their brick and mortar existence, and Amazon being a leader in the online business. As we're talking about the omni-channel growth, where you're trying to grow both, online business, but at the same time you have some physical presence, that brought challenges in terms of how do we serve the customers. Customers want to buy the products the way they want to buy it and when they want to buy it. So are we creating separate supply chains, separate channels to serve these customers? Are we integrating the brick and mortar and the online business together? And going back to the Walmart and Amazon example, Amazon is good at shipping onesies, twosies, smaller quantities to changing destinations, whereas Walmart is more about efficiency and shipping in pallets through cross docks to known locations. So two very, very different models. Now, what we have learned with Amazon is high service level, but yet, that last mile delivery problem is there and creating cost issues. So from that perspective, the digitization had already started, where companies were working on it. What with the pandemic, that accelerated this move, this shift to what we call the Amazon model. And we're seeing it with other retailers, Target growing their online business, and many companies buying other companies or establishing partnerships. For example, Ulta Beauty, the cosmetics company, they have a partnership with Target where they're establishing areas within Target stores where they can reach to the customer through their brick and mortar. Now, having said that, e-commerce, while we're moving our business online, we're also looking for brick and mortar presence to reach to the customer because of that last mile delivery problem. The last mile, if you look at Amazon buying Whole Foods was attractive because of its physical presence where you can reach the customer closer. So from the distribution side, what has been the impact of this shift on the distribution? So starting out with network design, we're trying to get in closer proximity to the customers to reduce the transportation delivery cost. Now the customers can buy in the store, they can buy online and pick up in store, they can do the curbside pickup, which from the statistics this holiday weekend that has exploded. The numbers are tremendous on the curbside pickup, or they can get it delivered. But at the same time, it comes at a very high cost in terms of, especially if you're shipping your product to the customer, then there is the cost of packing, there is the cost of shipping. And in order to reduce that, we're trying to get closer to the customers, but at the same time, encouraging the customers to utilize some of these alternatives as come and pick it up in the store, which is cheaper for you, but at the same time, it is cheaper for the retailer. So aside from those, we're also noticing that some retailers are converting their brick and mortar stores into fulfillment centers. Best Buy is a good example, closing 250 stores, converting them into fulfillment centers, and also establishing what we call for dark stores, where there are no customers. It's all about preparing the order and shipping the order, highly automated, mechanized. And we're seeing some of those changes in on the distribution side. Also, what we're noticing is brand loyalty is diminishing, it's weakened. What's important is product availability, which emphasizes the importance of inventory. But with the shutdowns and with the disruptions in the supply chains, as we have seen, and Paolo mentioned, for example, in meat packing plants, some of us could not get any product in the stores because they couldn't process it. We're seeing that the inventory levels are low. So from a customer standpoint, customers have not seen those dramatic reductions, sales this holiday weekend. The prices were relatively higher compared to the previous years, and that's due to not having enough inventory. And another thing that we're noticing is inventory, product variety is low. We're down to the essential products rather than having all kinds of variety, which also creates challenges for supply chains. And as you design the network, and many companies are looking at redesigning their network, and I'm going to go back to the example of Ulta again. Right now, they are looking at, they have a major focus on redesigning their network after all these changes, and their partnership with Target. And finally, on the delivery side, what we're seeing is a huge demand on transportation. Amazon encouraging customers to come and pick up their items in physical locations rather than getting it shipped to their homes. That's also a good indication of where we are in terms of the pressure we're putting on the transportation resources. We don't have enough transportation capacity, again, to reach to the customer in terms of that last mile delivery. So I'm seeing that we have some questions from the audience, so I don't want to take up too much. I'm guessing we're going to address some of those things as we go through. But in conclusion, the digitization had already started. The pandemic accelerated it, where some of these changes that we're seeing with the supply chains, supply chains have been tested. And those companies that had made the move to digitization before the pandemic have succeeded, and they are doing pretty well. But going forward, where are we? How is this split between online business and brick and mortar going to exist after we go through, after the pandemic winds down? How are we going to encourage our customers for more curbside pickup versus home delivery? And what about the new business strategies? We're going to see some different business strategies as we come out of this. And we're seeing a lot of growth of delivery services. Again, and one thing that we haven't mentioned, what about the sustainability? We're talking about getting all these packages delivered at home. But if you think about it, we're creating a lot of, sustainability issues, carbon footprint, and all those packaging materials. How do we handle that problem? And that's also related to the supply chain side. Again, I don't want to take up too much time. I'm going to pause here and let the audience ask questions.
Thank you so much. No, that was great. I was trying to trigger more questions. I wasn't trying to get you to slow down because I was taking notes on all the questions I have from what you were saying. So yes, if you folks have some more questions, please put them in the chat. I have received some in advance. In the meantime, while I'm gathering all those up, I spoke very quickly at the beginning and I skipped over introducing Dr. Hutchins, Holly Hutchins, who's the professor and department chair for Human Development and Consumer Sciences from the College of Technology, to bring you some greetings. And I actually have a question for you too as well, Holly, once you're through with your welcome.
Thank you, Mike. I said I really didn't need to say anything because the stars of the show really, need the most time. But I just wanted to thank this distinguished panel for speaking. Of course, I'm biased and privy for the great work of Barbara and Olivia in terms of retail and consumer sciences. We're in the College of Technology. A lot of people think, well, why are social scientists in the College of Technology? Well, it's because the technology consumer individual team interface is something that we have spent decades looking at. And so I think that what you heard today from the entire panel exhibits all the different ways we can look at retail consumerism. And goodness gracious, I am a consumer, and so many things are changing. And in fact, our faculty coined the term retail reimagined. And so I think they demonstrated that today with the great ideas coming from not only Barbara and Olivia, but also from Funda and Powell. So I thought it was a great opportunity to see some interesting ideas about what's happening, and then also what's coming up in the future. So thank you, Mike. Thank you, my colleagues in Bauer, and also Barbara and Olivia.
Thank you. And I have a quick question for you, Holly. How is this reinventing higher ed in this space for you all? Is it making for some challenges on majors, classes, points of interest? How are you all teaching new things? Are you coming? I mean, I may be throwing the cart before the horse here, but I'm sure you're chasing this new innovation as well, right?
Honestly, we Retail and Consumer Sciences were the first program at the University of Houston to actually offer a complete online option for their undergraduate programs. So e-tailing is something that is not new to us. We have been studying that. We've been developing students around that. We were also the first one to develop an entrepreneurship focus within our Retail and Consumer Sciences program. And so both of those things really, for my faculty, we've always been agile. And so the shift to online offering is not only something that we research, it's something that we practiced for a long time. And I know it was a bit more disruptive for some of our colleagues across campus, but we feel like we've really been honing that for for really, gosh, now 2 decades in terms of the e-learning space. So, so I don't know if Funda and Powell have other perspectives that they want to share in terms of higher ed. Barbara Stewart, for one, has researched this for the broad range of her career. So Barbara or Funda or Powell, if you want to say anything about Mike's question.
I just say it's very fun to pass this on to students because it's a wonderful time to be involved in retail. And so we can see all of the innovations that have been talked about this morning and many that we didn't have time to touch on that makes it a very vibrant time to be engaged. I mean, you know, I have colleagues in other fields and their field kind of clicks along, maybe even decade after decade in some similar fashion. Well, retail and logistics and supply chain, that's just not the case. It is changing week by week, and that is fun for students.
Yeah, I would think it is.
On that comment also, if I might, just remember, it's been interesting for us to learn the new technologies also and move our courses online. But in terms of supply chain, we're really under supply chain revolution right now. And, you know, we've had the globalization, we're struggling with that going back and forth. But now, you know, with I guess all of the electronic ordering and the delivery requirements right now and how you structure your supply chains are really unknown. And so I think over probably the next 2 or 3 years, we're going to look back on today and say, wow, we were really in the infancy of what's happening. But
Since we're, oh, Funda's jumping in. I saw her unmute. Go ahead.
I teach MBAs, and it has given me a great opportunity to basically help them see some of the concepts that we talk about, you know, in action. There's a lot of risk management issues. There's a lot of strategy issues. And, you know, it's something that they are living through. They can relate to it. And like Powell said, supply chains are going through major transformation. And we're seeing the impact of technology, the digitization, and how it's creating new business models, and how you think about designing your strategy, how you structure your supply chains to fit that strategy. So from that perspective, it's been very, very good in terms of visualizing and seeing it in action.
So I'm going to paraphrase a question for each of the 4 of you. One of the questions is, what trends will you see this holiday season that will carry forward? So I'm going to paraphrase that question because there's so many things that are changing. Each one of you gets one really cool opportunity or one challenge that you think will carry forward after the pandemic dies down and all the new reinventions of supply chain and retail. What is the one thing that really intrigues you or really challenges you that you think will carry forward when we get to the quote new normal?
I'd love to answer that. I think it's touchless retail for me. I think the ways to do that to make customers, either just for expediency or for health safety, the ability to have transactions that require no human interface and yet have a personal touch.
Okay, excellent. Powell, you look like you're chomping at the bit. You want to take a shot?
I'll jump in. I have a little note here that I saw yesterday that says 29 retailers have filed for bankruptcy in 2020 so far, including Guitar Center, one of my favorites, Sur La Table, J.C. Penney's, Neiman Marcus, J. Crew, Pier 1. Okay, they're going to have to change. It's a revolution. We have to change.
Exactly. Funda or Olivia, do you get your one opportunity or challenge that you think will carry forward? Remember to unmute.
So I think that retail will constantly be challenged to stay consumer focused. Customer has so many options available to them now. But in terms of technology, something I didn't have a chance to talk about is shoppable social commerce, like the ability to shop Instagram, shop TikTok. This is the wave of the future and not going anywhere anytime soon. So I think that this is going to follow us, that consumers have more avenues to shop different channels.
Excellent. Thank you.
I think I see a lot of integration of technology going forward with the business models. I think that part is going to accelerate. I was at a conference last week and one of my colleagues was using an example that he uses in class. He says, well, you're having your morning coffee and all of a sudden you get a message that says your toaster is about to go out. And then you're getting on your phone that says, you know, here are the options based on your usage. Here are the options that you may consider from your Amazon app. And then, you know, we can also customize it. Well, the example goes on, but the point is customer-centric, technology integration, and also for firms creating very different business strategies.
Excellent. We have two questions that I'm going to combine into one that we got in advance of today, and they're both about box stores or brick and mortar. One is, do you think traditional malls will become extinct or replaced by distribution centers? And then the other one asked about brick and mortar looking like in the next decade. Are we going to start to stand? And I would say even, this is for my friends in Bauer for another conversation, Geo might be taking notes, you know, commercial real estate. What is real estate going to look like because of the, you know, the contactless shopping and things like that? So back to my original question, traditional malls and brick and mortar, where do you all see that going when this all settles down?
Fulfillment centers and display areas, showrooms. That's where I see the brick and mortar locations going to.
Okay. Anyone else?
Experience is going to be important. Is who has the best experience in the store. One of the things I think that is really exciting is all the pairing. I remember the first time seeing a KFC Taco Bell together, and I said, "What was happening? Like, who has chicken and Taco Bell together?" But now you start to see grocery stores are incorporating DSW in their store. Target has partnered with beauty supply stores to come inside of the store. So I think a store within a store is really going to be the wave of the future as we look to how retail stores are going to look.
I'd like to jump in also on the brick and mortar versus the e-commerce type of delivery. I think it's going to have to be a combination of it because customers order in different requirements, different service requirements. Some are willing to like the convenience of being able to pick up. So I think it's going to be a challenge for supply chains. It's just going to have to be a combination of brick and mortar and the e-commerce type. And I think we're going to see store shopping. I think we're going to see dark stores with robotics powered order fulfillment centers serving Houston, for example. So I just think it's going to have to be a combination. It's going to evolve. A big part of it's going to also rely along what our shopping patterns are. How many of us want to pick up on it curbside? A lot of my students have said they like it for convenience even before the pandemic. So we're going to have to let this shake out. A lot of people like myself had never ordered online before the pandemic and never had deliveries to my home and stuff like that. So we're going to have to see how it shakes out, but it's going to be a combination.
So
I agree with Pal that it will be a combination. There are things that each of them offer. Brick and mortar stores will have to differentiate themselves in ways that make consumers have a reason for coming into the stores. But we also know that people shop for a lot of reasons other than buying goods, other than getting goods. We shop for sociology. We shop to be with other people. We shop because we want to be out of our homes. We shop for some kind of stimulating experience. So there are, as Pal said, we're going to see some new different mix.
We shop for the Nestle Chocolate Chip Cookie Factory, and we shop to go see Santa too. Don't leave those out. So a couple things, we have some questions. One is it's kind of a pandemic question, maybe for our supply chain folks as well. We have a guest who works for a vitamin company asking if she's hearing that they're increasing inventory levels at Target, Walmart, Walgreens, and associates. Do you see, because of the pandemics, do you see the supply chain and inventory levels in certain categories going up because of the pandemic?
Well, it's been an ebb and flow, depending upon what the consumers are rushing towards buying. Of course, the pandemic hit us with a lot of shortages in capacity. I bought a new pickup. Texas, I had to have a bigger pickup truck. So I bought a new truck this year, and I had a very difficult time finding what I wanted at the dealers. I called around quite a bit, and basically the factories were down from March to, for 3 months, March to May, really curtailed the capacity. So from that perspective, it was inventory shortage. So I think they're just swinging up and down right now.
Yeah.
I think we're seeing the lag, you know, because of the disruptions, we were very low on the inventory. And now the supply chains are starting to catch up. That's why we're seeing inventory going up in certain categories. And some products, there is still delay, and we're not going to see them for a while. But for the most part, I think this is the impact of the, you know, opening up of the economy.
So we have time for one more question on both sides, retail side and the supply chain side. So I'll fire off the supply chain side question first. I've kind of gathered some questions and consolidated them. So we have the pandemic distribution going on of the vaccine at the same time as the logistics supply chain of the holiday. How are those potentially impacting each other, or do you see it impacting each other at all?
Those are very separate supply chains. I don't know many products that need to be stored at what, -70 degrees. So with a lot of stuff that we have with the vaccines, it's a dedicated frozen supply chains and having storage, transportation equipment, et cetera, like that. So I think they're fairly two separate supply chains with individual assets focused on the different requirements.
So excellent answer. So my second part of that question was going to be, Mike, if that's a really simple answer, have a second part. So maybe for Funda or you, on a scale of 1 to 10, how stressed is the supply chain system right now with all of this going on? You talked about pickup centers and people being asked to come pick up their stuff, and I see random U-Haul trucks being rented by Amazon to drop stuff off, right? And the security of that it's not an Amazon truck coming to your front porch, but it's a U-Haul who could be anyone coming to your front porch. So there's some security. How stressed on a 1 to 10 scale do you think our system is now?
For on the last mile delivery part, I would say pretty stressed out. I mean, if anybody has ordered groceries, I mean, who's delivering your groceries? It's somebody in a private car, or your Amazon packages are coming up, somebody shows up, you think, okay, who's visiting me? And then all of a sudden somebody gets out of the car and makes the delivery. So that shows the urgency of it. And again, as I mentioned earlier, Amazon trying to encourage people to go and pick up their packages from brick and mortar locations is a very good indication. Amazon is an online business. Now they are, you know, like many e-commerce businesses, focusing on the brick and mortar side because of the stress on the transportation capacity.
And one quick follow-up to that, Funda. Are you all seeing any legality of state line type purchases being stressed, meaning products, there's liquor rules and there's wine rules and there's, Colorado product rules, let's just call them that are being stressed because you can buy them in more places, and the supply chain is being stressed in a legal way, or do you see it as business as usual?
I'm not sure about this one. I'll have to refer this one to my colleagues, if anybody.
Well, thank you, Funda.
I told you I would ask an off call.
All I know is I can get a margarita drive-through here in Houston still.
Exactly.
So I don't have any problem, and Specs is still running ads, so I don't see an issue.
Okay, great. All right, so to my last question is for our retail friends. There's two. The first one is about security and cashless transactions continuing after the pandemic. Where do you see cashless transactions, and is this the wave of the future? And the security of consumer financial information, is that still a concern in the retail space? For Barbara or Olivia?
Yeah, it is a concern. The security of personal information will continue to be a concern, but we also have cybersecurity professionals ratcheting up their capabilities. So I think it's a balancing act of transactions versus security. And quite honestly, as consumers, we're willing to take that risk. The number says we're willing to take the risk. And if we lose occasionally, we lose. It's when we get a big breach of security, as was the case with Target months ago, that we all, get really agitated. But I think as a whole, cybersecurity is going to keep up with the technology.
Fantastic. So my last, Olivia, did you want to add something to that before I go to my last question for everybody for advocacy moment? Go ahead.
No, I didn't want to add anything. I
Oh.
think Barbara answered it completely.
Okay, so the last question was really quickly, what do the careers look like in management for retail? And then as a University of Houston professor, where are the career spaces for students who want to come into these industries in your areas? Maybe a couple sentences each. What would you encourage them to study at the University of Houston?
So I think that management in retail is very strong. Not many people know, but you typically make more money as a manager and a manager at a retail store than you do working in corporate. I think there's just the idea that, hey, I'm in corporate, it's a much more glamorous life. People think the devil wears Prada. However, managing a retail store, you have so many different incentives when your business is doing well. If someone wants to go into this area, I highly suggest 3 things. Number one, that they work in retail. Nothing is more powerful than that experience. Number two, that they earn a degree in retailing and consumer science at University of Houston. And number three, that they continue to work their network. It is so important in the industry that we're in, that you continue to make connections. I know so many students that I have taught at previous universities or I worked with when I was in graduate school. I still keep in contact with them, and they're still so happy because I can provide references and letter of references for them, even as they make moves within the industry, right? Like whether they're moving from the corporate side to the retail side. So those are the 3 things that I think are important if you want to move your career in this area.
Excellent. Anybody else would like to add, Barbara or Funda?
Yeah, I think Olivia did a very great job. One of the reasons we would recommend, of course I would, retailing and consumer science as a major is because the employers tell us our graduates are ready to hit the ground running. They have practical experience, we require an internship, and they are ready to help contribute to the bottom line immediately. Also, more than half of retail jobs are not in the stores. They're across diverse areas. IT, for example, is a really hot area, as you might expect, with all of this online work for retail careers. So stores, as Olivia said, is the place to make money, as well as the sales reps from product to retail sellers. There's big money in those areas, and we support those if you're after big money. If you're just after excitement, anywhere along that retail chain works.
And our friends from Bauer College, I know you're going to say study supply chain at the Bauer College. Unmute yourself there real quick.
Sure. Okay, so supply chain has been one of the fastest growing disciplines in the business community over the last probably 20 years. And I started off my presentation talking about globalization of supply chain. So it's certainly global. It certainly challenges in procurement. It's been very transformative with very dynamic and change. And there's really a great shortage of supply chain trained people. If you look at the current workforce, a lot of them are people that entered into logistics before supply chain had been invented, before it's a discipline. So it's technology oriented, it's people oriented as well. It's very highly dynamic. In Bauer, as far as placements, we were one of the higher placed majors, just about placed almost 100% of our majors last year. And we're second to the highest salaries offered by all majors at Bauer. So we follow our colleagues in MIS who are important with this as well. If you're looking for a career in supply chain, you can do a supply chain major, MS, an MBA with supply chain, whatever you would like to get, whatever level. And then it really coordinates well with the degree in marketing, for example. That's very important for supply chain, finance, and then MIS, analytics linked with supply chain. We're really heading that way. So again, the majors are in very high demand, great career opportunities.
Thank you. Funda, final thoughts?
I think Powell summarized it all. The only thing I would add is we're seeing a lot of focus on technology, analytics, and those types of areas where students are focusing on. But this is also something that we're hearing from the recruiters. What is important is while you're enhancing your skill sets with those with analytics, and we need to realize that we have to have a disciplined knowledge. Without understanding your decision-making area, applying those tools will not really provide very good results. So basically my point is, yes, let's learn about the technologies, let's learn about data, let's learn about how to analyze the data, but let's know what we're using the data for and how we're going to make these decisions. So from that perspective, supply chain is an interdisciplinary area, and it is very broad. And you can't, and the opportunities are tremendous, especially in Houston. So it's a very, very good area to think about.
Well, I want to thank all 5 of you, certainly Barbara, Olivia, Pal, Funda, for your participation today. This has been spectacular. I want to thank Holly for joining us as well. What I would say is, and this is a terrible pun, is I see 5 people on the screen, that the month of December is certainly Christmas morning every day for all of you, right? This is like the hot spot. It's the hot zone for what you do, and you can certainly feel that enthusiasm and knowledge. Again, confirming that we have the best faculty in the country at the University of Houston, and we appreciate you for participating today. I want to thank all of you online for participating today. This recording will go up on the HoustonAlumni.com website for you to pass along to others. We also will have a short survey to fill out when we are done, and we will send to you. And I want to thank all of you for participating today. And again, reminder, on December the 8th, we'll have our next UH2U webinar. We'll be talking about grad school, which I've heard mentioned a few times here in this particular seminar as well. So thank you all so much for joining us. Happy holidays on behalf of the Alumni Association. Stay safe, stay well, and go Cougs.
Thank you. Happy holidays.
Thanks, Mike.
Thanks, everyone.
Yep, nice to meet everybody. Thank you.
Meeting everyone.